Every night, your brain runs a cleanup cycle, so critical that skipping it starts dismantling the very thing that makes you human. While you sleep, your brain physically flushes out toxic waste proteins linked to memory loss and cognitive collapse. Without that nightly reset, memories from today never fully lock in, and emotions from yesterday never fully clear. Every complex animal on Earth pays this same biological debt, despite the very real danger of lying unconscious in the dark. The question isn't why we sleep, it's what kind of species survives long enough to wonder. Think about what that actually means. Your brain, the most sophisticated structure in the known universe, goes offline every single night by design. Not by accident, not by weakness, by absolute biological necessity. And while it's dark and quiet and you're completely vulnerable, something urgent is happening inside your skull that you'll never consciously witness. A slow accumulation is already underway in the brains of people who skipped last night and the night before that, building toward a threshold that doesn't announce itself until the damage is done.
While you're awake, your brain is burning fuel at a rate no other organ can match, and that combustion leaves wreckage behind. Toxic proteins build up between neurons all day long, and your waking brain has almost no way to clear them out. So your body found a solution so extreme it sounds like something engineered. It shrinks the brain itself. During sleep, your brain cells contract by nearly 60%, cracking open channels between them wide enough for cerebrospinal fluid to rush through like a tide. That fluid doesn't trickle, it floods, sweeping out the metabolic debris your neurons have been drowning in since morning. Among the waste it carries away is a protein called amyloid beta, the same compound that accumulates in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. One bad night, and the flush is incomplete, leaving more residue than the night before added. String enough of those nights together, and the residue stops being residue. It starts being damage. Your brain isn't resting during sleep. It's running a cleaning cycle your survival depends on. What it does next, locking in what you learned and deciding what to feel, is a different kind of maintenance entirely.
The waste-clearing system is only the beginning of what the sleeping brain is doing. Every night, your brain is running two other operations that are just as critical and just as invisible. The first is memory consolidation, the process of deciding what you learned today actually deserves to stay. During sleep, the hippocampus replays the day's experiences and transfers the ones that matter into long-term storage. Without that transfer, new learning doesn't fade slowly, it simply never arrives. The second process is emotional regulation, and this one is harder to see until it breaks. Sleep strips the emotional charge from difficult memories, letting you carry the lesson without the full weight of the wound. A sleepless mind doesn't just forget more, it feels everything at full voltage with no overnight reset. Now, multiply that across not one person, but an entire species, accumulating night after night, generation after generation. The capacity to learn, to adapt, to hold a society together, all of it eroding quietly, without a single dramatic collapse. And that raises the question no one wants to answer. What could a species like that ever actually build? Every generation that ever built something, language, law, memory passed from parent to child, did it on the back of sleep. A species that never slept would carry every unprocessed experience forward, stacking cognitive debt it could never repay. Until thought itself became noise. Without the nightly reset, emotional regulation collapses first. Cooperation fractures, and the social architecture that civilization requires simply cannot hold. Learning without consolidation
is just exposure. And exposure without sleep never hardens into knowledge that survives the individual. No accumulated wisdom means no tradition, no science, no story told the same way twice.
A species like that doesn't build cities, it barely builds sentences.
The question isn't whether they'd eventually figure it out, it's whether they'd survive long enough to wonder.
And you are here, wondering, which means the version of your ancestors that slept outlasted every version that didn't.
The thing that looks like doing nothing is the reason everything else was possible.